The Charlotte Ledger Podcast is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network.
Today's episode is presented by PBS Charlotte's Unspun program, helping you learn what politicians are thinking but not saying, hosted by former Governor Pat McCrory. Welcome to the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. I'm Ashley Fahey, managing editor of the Charlotte Ledger. To find out more about the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com. I'm joined today by Laura Belcher, President and CEO of Habitat for Humanity of the Charlotte region. Today, we're talking about Charlotte's housing affordability crisis, how Habitat is changing its approach to building to address housing disparities, how policy is reshaping Charlotte's housing landscape, and what Belcher wishes more people understood about affordable housing. After this podcast was recorded, Habitat Charlotte confirmed to the Ledger that Belcher is stepping down from her post at the end of the year. Thanks for joining us today. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey here? What have been some of the major milestones since you joined Habitat in 2014, I think?
Yeah. So, in the last 12 years, we've seen a lot of change and growth. Through the years, we've expanded programming, so really focused on not only just building homes, which a lot of people know Habitat for to building homes and standing up walls, but we've expanded our critical home repair, where we keep people in their homes and do repairs on aging homes. We've expanded our financial literacy opportunities to provide education for folks that are interested in becoming homeowners. So lots of programmatic expansion. We've gone through 2 consolidations and expanded our geographic footprint in the last 12 years. And I think one of the biggest milestones was hosting the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Work Project in October of 2023, that brought nearly 4,000 people together to build homes for a week in Charlotte.
Wow, that's a lot of people. Were they all local to the area, or did people come in from other parts of the country?
People came in from all over the country to help us build. It was quite the week of activity.
I bet. So you mentioned that a lot of people know Habitat for the building of new homes. A lot of people I know have probably volunteered on a Habitat home. I have myself, but I know that's just a little bit of what you all do. How has the mix maybe changed since you joined Habitat in 2014? And is that mix continuing to change?
Yeah, we're continuing to evolve based on the needs of the community and some of the shifts in demographics and things like that. So when I first started, all of our homes involved a significant amount of volunteer activities. We still use a ton of volunteers on our builds and always will, right? Like it's a core piece of who we are and our foundation. It's in our mission to bring people together to build. So we will always use volunteers, but we don't want to have the volume of volunteers be a constraint to our growth. So in addition to homes that are built by volunteers, we also work with subcontractors, and we work with residential home builders to build some homes turnkey for us. So we kind of have a variety of options now in how we build.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk about, was that you guys are now working with builders, contractors, and other folks to build, I think, whole communities in some cases.
Yeah.
Which I think, when I think of Habitat, I don't necessarily think of them building full communities. So can you talk about how that project or those partnerships came about and what the sort of process for that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. This is our evolution of really moving what I might call from home builder to neighborhood developer. And so, in our roots, and as we started, we were doing scattered lot and infusing Habitat homes kind of into existing neighborhoods. That's really hard to find empty lots in Mecklenburg County now. And so we've had to evolve as the residential market has evolved. And so we're now picking up raw land rather than individual lots. And so with that, then we become a developer. So instead of building 1 or 2 homes, we pick up raw land. And then we need to do all of the development, the water, the sewer, the roads, the sidewalks, all of that, the tree save. And then we bring together and build out a neighborhood, whether that's, a neighborhood of 17 townhomes on the east side of town, or we've got a neighborhood going up right now that is 28 single-family detached homes. So we can do different things, different sizes, different housing styles and things like that. But we've really evolved more to be a neighborhood developer.
And to your point, that's just because land is getting snapped up, it feels like, so quickly in Charlotte. There's only so much of it left in Mecklenburg County. What other things as an organization have you guys had to do to evolve, knowing that this city is growing so fast? knowing that the land prices, I'm sure, are going up. How do you manage to keep homes affordable in that environment?
It's a challenge. The land costs are absolutely going up. Land is a finite resource. We're not making more land, so we have to make good, efficient use of the land that we're able to secure. And so we are taking advantage of different opportunities for light density. So where we might have built a single standalone home, we might now build a duplex or a triplex if the lot supports that. We're doing more two-story stacked townhomes, and we can do 3, 4, 5 of those in a row. So continuing to look at creatively, how do we use the land well, and at the same time, how do we blend our housing into the neighborhood that we're putting it into, so that it's not inconsistent.
Yeah, and I know the Charlotte's Unified Development Ordinance made some of that densification a little bit easier. What's been your experience as an organization with the UDO? Do you find it's been easier to build some of this housing?
Yeah, I think that, the UDO gives some more flexibility to that light density. When should we, be looking at a lot for a single family detached versus a duplex or a triplex? So it gives us the ability to be a little bit more strategic and intentional in what we're doing. I think that, the ordinance continues to evolve and will continue to evolve as we all, as a community, lean into it and determine what are the best ways to add supply.
Especially with these communities, what are the price points you guys are looking at, and how do you work with a developer or builder who maybe traditionally builds market rate? How does that kind of work as far as making sure homes are affordable and making sure that the partners you're working with are still getting kind of a return on their investment?
Yeah, absolutely. When we work with our for-profit partners, the great news is that they are often very generous, right? And so, they are bringing solutions to us that might be a little bit below what they would charge into the public, sometimes offering to do builds at cost or at a discounted profit margin or whatever, so that we can work together, knowing that what we need collectively as a community is more supply. And so this is one of their ways to philanthropically advance that, use their skills, their gifts, their talents, but keep it at a price point that we can afford. And then what we do is we resell it to a Habitat family, and we price it based on what the family can afford, right? So we right-size their mortgage to ensure that their housing costs don't exceed 30% of their household income.
Wow, and I know that 30% AMI threshold is something city leaders have been wanting to see way more of. Of course, it's very challenging to do. Have you found that your capacity for being able to deliver homes that are affordable for that threshold? I know it depends on the family. What is that like in 2026?
Yeah, so really looking at housing solutions for families that are below 30% AMI, that's more of a rental situation. Habitat focuses more on a home ownership situation. And so we're really focusing on those families that are kind of 40 to 80% AMI to become a homeowner. And so when we look at kind of that housing continuum, we need solutions across the whole continuum, from homelessness to affordable rental to affordable home ownership. And so, that we all play along that continuum.
And when you look at the region, now that Habitat Charlotte is in not just Mecklenburg, but in other counties outside of Mecklenburg, do you hope that the organization might expand geographically to other parts of the region, especially as Charlotte becomes more of a region?
I think that you're right, that the community is becoming more of a region. And so I think there are some opportunities to look at how do we leverage, buying power and things like that across the region. And we can do that working with habitats that are our neighbors and collaboratively. And so I think there's a lot of different ways to address it. But I think the housing crisis has never been more complicated, and costs are really expensive. And so I think there is benefit to working collaboratively.
Sure. I want to get to that point you just said. Housing has never been more complicated. We know that affordable housing has been a challenge for generations now. But what is it about the challenges specifically facing the Charlotte region today and the environment that we're currently in with housing affordability that makes this kind of distinct?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that are kind of all coming together all at the same time, right? And so what we've got is a beautiful community that we live in that is attractive to others. And so our population growth is significant. And it is very, very difficult to match the population growth with housing supply. And so what you've got is a supply-demand mismatch. With more people coming into the region, looking for apartments, looking for houses of all price points, right? And so when you have the population growth that we've got, we need housing solutions across all price points in order to take some of the pressure off. At the same time, more recently, what we've seen is an escalation in interest rates compared to the historically low rates that we had during COVID. it still feels like a little bit of a shockwave to the residential housing to go from the rates that we had just 4 years ago to the rates that we have today. So that has slowed down some of people's interest in selling their home. If they had a home and they locked into that really low rate, it's hard for them, even if they want to get a bigger home or they want a smaller home, it's hard to give up that really low interest rate. And so what we're seeing is existing homeowners are not selling at the rate that they used to, which prohibits new buyers from getting into the market. So we got kind of the combination of these rising interest rates and an increased demand. And the two things are really making the Charlotte marketplace more expensive.
Does Habitat ever buy existing inventory and rehab it for a family or anything like that?
We do, absolutely. In fact, that's a growing piece of our activity. And specifically, we're doing a program in partnership with the city of Charlotte where we are acquiring homes, we rehab them, and we resell them, again, to an income-qualified family below 80%, and work with them to secure down payment assistance if they're eligible, and get them into a home. So that way we're both building new homes and we're acquiring homes on the open market in order to increase the number of families we can serve.
Got it. And you said that's kind of a growing share of your business and what you do. Is that simply because that's what's available, is the existing homes versus lots, or is that just kind of more economically feasible? What's driving that?
There's a couple of things. I think the partnership with the city of Charlotte has made that program be financially viable and thrive, which is great. We also are aware that Charlotte and a lot of communities in the Southeast have lost home ownership opportunities to institutional buyers who have come in and bought homes that were intended to be equity generating assets and turn them into rentals. We can't really stop that market force from happening. And so we've kind of are joining them. So when we find a house that's on the market, we buy it, but we restrict it for home ownership. So it can't be used as a rental. So it's kind of a way to combat that institutional investors.
And for the homes you all build as an organization, the ones you preserve, is there a covenant that's usually placed on the property to ensure its affordability?
Yeah, and so what we'll do is we'll de-restrict it so that it can stay affordable. We also will keep a first right of purchase, so we can buy it back. So if somebody needs to move on, they need a bigger house, they've got a job change in Tennessee, whatever it is, we can buy the house back, do some light rehab, and then resell it again to another Habitat family and keep it in the affordable inventory in town. I think that's a really important thing, that we don't lose inventory due to market forces.
Yeah, I know that's something that we're seeing with the naturally occurring affordable housing. So much of that's getting demolished because developers are coming in and building new. And that is a very strong market force in Charlotte and has been for some time. I wanted to ask, I know it's both, but what do you see right now as the biggest challenge? Is it preserving kind of the existing affordable housing, that naturally occurring affordable housing, or is it the hurdles to actually being able to build new affordable housing? I know that's both things are a challenge right now, but from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenge?
Yeah, and I do think that there's a lot to be said that we need to preserve those naturally occurring affordable houses. That's a bigger piece. That's a piece of our work with our repairs. So most of the time we're working with seniors. We're going into aging homes that have deferred maintenance. We're going in and really providing the repairs they need so that they can age in place, and we return the house to a safe and stable place for them to age in place. Without that, they're more likely to leave the home because it's in disrepair, and then it's more likely that home will be purchased, maybe torn down, replaced with something else, and the fabric of the neighborhoods will be lost over time. And so I really feel like our repair efforts are probably the strongest tool we've got against anti-displacement and anti-gentrification.
Yeah, and I know even property tax increases has been a big issue for some of these older homeowners who've maybe been in their home for a long time. Maybe their house is paid off, but they maybe can't afford the higher taxes they're facing now. So I know that's something that comes up a lot too. Have the areas of Charlotte and maybe Mecklenburg County and beyond, has that changed where you all work now, especially as it becomes harder to find land or find opportunities to do the work you do?
Yeah, so we are really conscious of trying to spread out where we're building and not over-concentrate in one place. And so our land acquisition team is constantly looking at where we can buy and kind of rotate through the city where we're building and where we're adding to neighborhoods.
We'll be right back to the conversation Today's episode is presented by PBS Charlotte's Unspun program, discussing what politicians are thinking but not saying.
Do you ever get a sense of pushback or NIMBYism, which not in my backyard for listeners who may not know? Do you ever get a sense of that when you all come into a neighborhood and do a project?
We do get some of that, and it's to me, it's usually a misunderstanding of who we're serving and our financial model, right? Sometimes there's a misunderstanding that we're giving houses away when really what we're doing is working with hardworking families to right-size their mortgage. So they are buying their home, they own their home, they've got the pride of home ownership and all of those things. The typical Habitat buyer is someone that is part of the fabric of our community. They're usually in the service industry, so they might be in healthcare, or they might be working in municipalities or the school system. They're working in our retail organizations. They're the folks that make our community tick. And so when we have faced some pushback, I usually find it's because people don't understand who we're working with.
And from a policy perspective, we know the city is hyper-focused on affordability. They're talking a lot about housing first models, things of that nature. The UDO obviously try to do things with density. But what other policy measures maybe would you want to see as someone who's in the world of building and preserving affordable housing that might make it easier to get more of this work done?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's talk on and off around the concept of inclusionary zoning and things like that. That's really a statewide issue. So it's something that I think could really benefit communities to strategically look at how that would work. But that's a statewide prohibition. And so not something that Charlotte can just snap their fingers and do overnight. But I do think that continuing to look at what incentives we can provide, if we don't have the stick of inclusionary zoning, what are the carrots? What are the incentives that we can be providing so that it's, every residential developer is incentivized to try and provide some affordable units as opposed to just looking at a handful of organizations, the nonprofits, and a handful of other organizations that are providing, kind of entry-level affordable housing. How do we make this something that is incentivized to be done by everybody that's building neighborhoods? That is the best solution if we can scatter it across every neighborhood that's being built. There's great social capital to having mixed income and blended neighborhoods. And so, that's kind of the dream, is to figure out how do we do that where everybody's participating and not just a handful.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of talk about how do you get more affordable housing, especially in places like South Charlotte that are, high opportunity areas. Of course, the land values are higher there, so maybe it's a little harder to do. But I know that's something I hear a lot, talked about a lot. Kind of in a similar vein, with the transit tax referendum, and we know that there's going to be ostensibly more transit coming to Charlotte eventually. One of the big lessons from the Blue Line, and maybe even a little bit the streetcar, was the displacement that happened along the Blue Line. Obviously, there was so much economic development, but a lot of folks got priced out. So from someone who's been in the affordable housing space for as long as you have, what are some things the city maybe could be proactive about, or even the county or other partners, when we think about not displacing along future rail corridors?
Yeah, I think it's real important to look at, again, those incentives. So along the Blue Line, there were some incentives for affordable housing, mostly for affordable rental. Very few builders, you see tons and tons of housing along the Blue Line now. None of that is affordable. The incentives that were offered to the developers just weren't significant enough to incentivize anybody to do it. So I think we've got to be really strategic about what are the incentives, how are we structuring those so that they will be triggered and utilized. What are the keys there? I think really looking at how we're creative. I think there's some things in the transit plan, the micro zones and some of those things that help, neighborhoods thrive regardless of whether or not they're on the bus line directly. I think that's really important.
Yeah, mobility, I know, is such a big connection point with housing and access to jobs and amenities and everything else. So I'm curious to see how that will kind of play out. Wanted to ask about the funding for Habitat. I don't know how that's historically played out, but has that changed at all? I don't know if federal grants have been part of the mix or anything. Can you talk a little bit about how Habitat is generally funded and how that's changed?
Yeah, absolutely. As a nonprofit, some of our strongest funding still comes from the community and private investment. And with rising costs for land and construction, that philanthropic component has never been more important to us. That's one of the key things is our general fundraising. We work really well with the city and the county and the other municipalities in our service area, and we do secure public grants. Some of those are federally funded through the city, and then we're a subrecipient. We don't have any direct grants with the federal government, but we are a subrecipient of some federal dollars coming through the city and the county that help us both with some down payment assistance and some housing trust fund dollars on our new builds, some funding for our critical home repair projects coming through community development block grant dollars, that kind of thing. We also have income coming in from our homeowners that have bought homes and are paying their mortgages. So they are contributing to the future of the organization and to future homes. And then we've got our restores, our retail arm, and the net income from the restores fuels and funds our mission. So we've got a variety of different ways that we are stringing together our revenue. And then lastly, it's the sale of the home. But usually the cost of the home exceeds the mortgage that we sell. So we need to subsidize every home that we build.
Have you had to get more creative? Has funding at all pulled back in any way? I just kind of hear anecdotally from some other nonprofit leaders sometimes that funding isn't what it used to be, even from the philanthropic side of things. How have you guys, what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen some real shining spots of folks stepping up during some of these times of uncertainty. And we've seen some folks stepping back, trying to figure out, what exactly is the economic situation and that kind of thing. So we think that, our business model is one that attracts a variety of different investors, from financial institutions to individuals to private foundations. And we're pleased and fortunate with that.
I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but is there a story that comes to mind that shares sort of the impact Habitat has locally? I'm sure there's probably so many to pick from, but if you can think of any homeowners you've worked with or anyone in the Habitat Charlotte program that would kind of illustrate the work you all do.
Well, let me use the most recent. So on Sunday evening, we had an opportunity to do a mortgage burning ceremony. And that is something that we do every 2 years. We invite everybody that has paid off their mortgage to come and celebrate that milestone and to ceremoniously burn a copy of their deed in the fire. Again, that's a tradition that's 100 years old to celebrate mortgage burning. Not a lot of Americans actually get to pay off their mortgages.
That's true.
Based on where we are in the life cycle of our organization and how long we've been around, we have people that are paying off their mortgages. And in fact, in the last 2 years, we've had 78 families pay off their mortgages. And so celebrating with those families and hearing the stories of, their kids growing up, and now their kids are out of the house, and met one who wants to come back and volunteer with us and build houses for future kids. It was a great night of celebration on Sunday night where we celebrated those families.
Yeah, to your point, it's hard to even imagine, paying off your mortgage. Like you said, it's becoming rarer and rarer. So I can see that being an important milestone for so many folks. What's maybe the biggest misunderstanding or misconception about affordable housing? And I know it's kind of a broad or vague question, but I'm just curious if there's certain things you keep running into having been in this space now for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to understand about affordable housing right now is that the cost of housing in Charlotte has escalated so much faster than incomes. And so as a society, there are just certain jobs and roles, the nurses in the hospital, the CMS teachers, the Charlotte Douglas, bus drivers, they just aren't compensated in a way that allows them to buy a home on the open market. They are hardworking families. They are doing important jobs. And their income just doesn't allow them to purchase a home because housing prices have escalated so fast. And so I think that's the biggest misunderstanding, is that the families that we work with are hardworking. They've been working hard for years. They are ready to own. They have good track records on their finances. They've been good renters. They just can't find a home on the open market that meets their current financial situation.
Yeah, and it feels like I keep hearing that there's a bigger disconnect between folks who maybe would need to be in that sort of affordable rental housing, affordable capital A, as some folks call it, where it's income restricted and it's at a certain level, versus the market. And there's like a huge gap, and that gap seems to be widening. Is that your experience from what you're seeing? There's just more people who kind of fall a little bit in the middle of that?
Absolutely. I'm not going to get the numbers exactly right, but I did some looking at the income growth, the area median income growth over the last decade. And it's up about 65 to 70%, but the cost of housing is up 250%.
Wow.
And so when incomes don't keep up with the cost of housing, you need more help to bridge that gap.
Absolutely. So what's next for Habitat Charlotte? What are some of the other projects, initiatives you're hoping to achieve? Anything on the horizon you can share?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of real exciting projects right now that we are doing with some co-developers, right? So we've got one, I was actually just looking at drone footage of the site as it's being cleared right now, where we're building in partnership with a co-developer, where we're going to put in 70 townhomes, and half of those will be Habitat families, and the other half will be an area median income that's a little bit higher than what we serve. So we'll have a nice mixed income neighborhood. So excited.
Do you guys have a wait list for Habitat? How does that work?
Yeah. The demand really exceeds our capacity, and so we kind of restrain that a little bit. And so we have an interest list, and so we start with people signing up on the interest list. We provide financial education workshops and classes, some that are online, so people can go ahead and start getting some education even before they apply, and see if they're home buyer ready. So we're trying to make that information available to people even before they apply for a home with us. Really, when you're applying for a home with us, you're going through a mortgage application, right? So it's a loan underwriting kind of application. So we want to make sure people are armed with all the information that they need before they go through that process.
And how long does it take from getting on that interest list initially to your home is ready?
Yeah, it depends. And I hate the answer, it depends.
But it does.
But it does. And there's kind of, a couple of things. One is the readiness of the family, the readiness of, the home build. Sometimes we've got homes that are further along that we're building in spec. And so, if everything matches up and somebody's ready to acquire a home and we've got a home that's ready, they can get in pretty fast. And we do have some homes that are ready that way. And then other times we've got folks that are coming into the program, and when it comes time to select their home, they're looking at something that in a neighborhood that hasn't even started yet. And so then they might be waiting a year until that project is done. So we've got some folks that come in and are ready to buy, and we have houses that are ready to go, and some that wait a year or longer because of the neighborhood.
They want the specific neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, so it really, it kind of like any normal traditional home buying process, right? You've got homes that are on the market ready to go and you could buy today. And you've got neighborhoods that, are coming soon in 2 or 3 years. And you can decide if you want to pre-purchase one of those lots and wait, or purchase one of the existing homes.
Got it. And then looking ahead to the future of housing in Charlotte, what does the kind of near-term picture look like? I know it's very hard to predict in the maybe world we're in today, but what's sort of your either hope or maybe concern about how affordability looks in the Charlotte region in the near term, knowing we have more people moving here? The needs probably aren't going away, but there's maybe some tools at our disposal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good news is I think that the community in general is trying to be creative, right? And trying to look at, again, how do we use light density? Is there a role for auxiliary dwelling units, ADUs? Is there a role for cottage or smaller homes, maybe better for rental than for homeownership? But what are the different types of housing solutions? And so I think the community is good at looking at those and trying to study what makes sense for us. I do think that we're going to continue to be challenged because this is a thriving community and we have lots of great features, including jobs and trees and beaches and mountains that are close. Our population is going to continue to grow. And so we have to stay very, very focused on making sure we're adding supply.
Absolutely.
It's the only way to address it.
Great. Laura, any closing thoughts here? I know we covered a lot of ground. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, but any other thoughts on anything with Habitat generally or housing in Charlotte more broadly?
I mean, I think the key is to recognize that there is no silver bullet to this. This is an issue that has been challenged really since the economic downturn in 2008, right? So this is 18 years of kind of pent up under building and supply constraint across the U.S. and certainly in our community. And so when something kind of builds up and aggregates for 18 years, we're not going to fix it overnight, but there's a role that everybody can play in trying to reverse some of these trends. And so invite everybody to get, informed and engaged, whether it's, using their voice for policy and advocacy or, using their dollars for philanthropic opportunities or using, their time and coming out and building on a Habitat house. There are lots of ways to get engaged. And we need everybody's effort because this is not going to be easy to solve or reverse.
Absolutely. Well, Laura, thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
Thrilled. Thank you for the opportunity.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening. For more information about the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com. This episode was produced by Lindsay Banks. Today's episode was presented by PBS Charlotte's Unspun program that tells you what politicians are often thinking but not saying.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.